And I'm kind of interested in what kind of person ends up creating that. Like as I said in the pre-interview, to me, it's got this like Superjail meets Hellraiser kind of quality. What I was looking at, but then also the pages definitely all had their own interesting differences to them too. Nothing was all the same across the board.
Well, yeah, the it's like I have a style and a look I'm going for, but at the same time, I don't want like such a level of consistency where it's like the hatch style is the same no matter what I'm drawing or the texture. Like I mix it up where some artists get stuck in like, here's what works for me. I try to just keep trying things to see what turns out well. Just from like an artsy fartsy aspect. But yeah, it's the book's basically it's like a mix of like Bible lore, and I'd say just for like pop culture reference, like Berserk and Transformers. Like it's this weird mix of Bible lore, giant organic mechs, and some sword play here and there. It's a sci-fi fantasy, so you can have technology and guns and magic and supernatural, all within the same world. A lot, almost like He-Man in a way. It kind of melded all those things where you had wizards right alongside, like a dude driving a tank with a laser cannon on top. So, and there were kings and queens and knights, yet they had tanks. So it's in that vein of the sense of the archaic's not off limits, just because you're looking at a world with a lot of technology at the same time.
Well, that was I've talked about it on the show before. That was always my favorite part about the Dark Tower series with Stephen King, is because you have this world where like Roland's the gunslinger, but he grew up in a castle with like the wizard Merlin, and and at the same time, like there's like these hyper technological parts of the world, the beams and the machines that go through and make the world turn. Like it never decided what it wanted to be, and that was why I loved it so much. It's like one minute you're reading a Louis L'Amour novel, and the next thing you know, you're reading Wizard in Glass, which is frankly the Wizard of Oz.
I'll say this, and this isn't like a toot my own horn, but to my own credit, I guess I'll say like I tried to intentionally keep the like let's say characters that were tech savvy compared to characters that wouldn't be, like clearly coming from worlds where it's obvious that they don't know about this stuff yet till they bump heads. And that's how the characters that aren't tech savvy discover what that is, and the ones that are now getting a little throwback to a more savage time by who they're meeting. So there's basically three core factions in the story. There is a planetary system called the Blood System, where like a renegade angel basically is parading as a king. He looks like a giant skeleton. His name's King Blood, and he's kind of like from one of those areas where it's that mix of all of it. You get a little bit of tech, a little bit of archaic, so you can have spaceships right next to castles type stuff. And then your other factions are more of like these savage beasts from the wild that don't know technology, and then you've got the middle ground characters that are almost pure technology by the time they run in. So you have the magic, the archaic and savage, and the tech kind of all meeting in one big territorial war. Because most of it's a war book. It's a family book mixed with a war book. It focuses around a family caught in the midst of it, but you're also getting the story of what's happening in the war simultaneously, but through their eyes in a lot of ways.
There's something about that I think that draws us, because I mean, so I look back at some of my favorite X-Men episodes back in X-Men '94, whatever it was. They were all the ones in the Savage Lands where you've got freaking dinosaurs and beasts around, and meanwhile, Mr. Sinister is up in the castle with all of his high technology fusing beasts together and creating monsters, and it's like there's something just I don't know, maybe primally interesting about that. Maybe it's like the where we come from, where we go.
When it's done well, it works. When it's done badly, it's really bad. It's like you don't have a lot of room for error with this stuff. So it's like you draw inspiration from things like that. You look at the guys that did do it well. Your Chris Claremont's, endless amounts of manga and anime creators and stuff. Anno's Evangelion. It was this weird mix of supernatural, yet they were aliens, yet there was biblical prophecy being fulfilled, yet giant mech. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's super weird, and that's part of what makes it cool is that you're made uncomfortable by weird imagery. It's not necessarily always gruesome. It's just weird. Weird sounds, weird stories, characters that are where their personalities are defined enough that you can kind of tell who's Evangelion just did such a good job of of basically taking a psychology book and opening it up and being like, here's a character, he's going to have mommy problems, this character is going to have uncle problems, and they just figured out how to make the personalities fit so well that they were all really defined on what their hang-ups and quirks were.
In the same genre, I think back to one of my favorite animes from back in the day, Trigun. And for me, it was the idea that okay, there's these two brothers and they're technically plants. They look like people, but they're really next generation vegetables. I'm having difficulty with this one, but it was great.
Well, there's so much competition in Japan in terms of being creative and standing out with something different that yeah, it may take a zillion manga to get that one awesome one, but that one awesome one, man, it leaves an impression on people forever. And I think that's part of what I'm trying to do with Death is give people a story that will leave a lasting impression. So, I want it to go on for a while. I want it to be this kind of long running thing, get at least 8 to 10 volumes total to make it a finished story complete in terms of characters living out their life, and then it's just over, they're done, they're dead, whatever. So